Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lunch and Learn. It's Tuesday already. Anyway, delighted to have you with us today. We've got a good coaching session lined up, and it's about harvesting the nuggets of your brand goal. So often, people come into a search, and when they leave, they say, "Oh gosh, I wish I'd said this," or "I forgot to say that. I forgot to emphasize this." And basically, when they say that, what they're saying is, "I didn't really rehearse. I didn't really plan the interview. I just went to answer questions." And that's common. That's what a lot of people do, but you can't do that anymore. The market's really changing. We're seeing some evidence of slowdown. So today, we really want to focus on helping you understand the concepts. We all remember the big things we did in my life. I remember being involved at the start of Lifelight. I remember being, in selling 14 programs nationally. I remember building a big network of rural and community hospitals. But there were so many other things that I did. Some of those things that I accomplished could have been instrumental in helping me find my next better job. And quite frankly, it took me a long time to learn that lesson. And then I had a lot of work to do to sit down and start harvesting my stories. So today we want to focus on that. And if you have questions, drop them in the chat box. This will be available. Our Prime platform is on Facebook now. We're going to be moving all of our membership activities over to Facebook because it can be a control place. We will still put some stuff on LinkedIn and YouTube, but Facebook will be our primary area. So let's get started and talk about what's going on in our company and what's going on in the world. So first of all, let's really talk about the internet speed. It's sometimes it can be really slow. Today, the agenda is the changes in your career community. Those are things we're working on to be better service to you and make this experience more meaningful. And the difference in who wins and who loses in the job search, and it's frequently those little gold nuggets. So that's our second item we're going to talk about today. You cannot afford to arrive without your A game. Preparation is key. Please don't knock yourself out. Don't go to all this hard work to get to the interview table and then not come with your A game. And I have, over 27 years, I saw that again and again. People think they're ready. People think they're bringing their A game. And when they leave, you always kind of felt like, well, I don't really have a full measure of the person. So one of the things we want to talk about is helping you grow your career, helping you enhance your skills so that you can bring your A game to the table. Now, when we first started our Your Career community, it was just a $49 membership. We didn't have a lot of activity on it because we were trying to experiment with what was going to work and what added value. So we've spent a lot of time, the month of August and early September, really thinking about what we wanted to do going forward, how we could make this more beneficial. I've been looking at some of the national outplacement companies are charging anywhere from $1,500 to $3,000 or $4,000, some as much as $15,000 or $20,000. People who are paying for this out of pocket can't afford that. So what we have come up with is several approaches. We have a high ticket item offer that basically means I spend a lot of my time with you and help you to get to the next level. Within our membership group, there's a $250 enrollment. There's a monthly membership subscription of $79. However, for being in the membership group, you will average 40% savings over our Premier Gold courses in the things like the mock interview and the Networking 3.0 course. And we're getting ready to launch a one-on-one interview boot camp, and you'll be able to save 40% on that as well. You will have unlimited access to our online courses. You will be able to participate in these twice weekly group sessions, okay? Twice weekly group coaching sessions. So we hope that that will add some value. Also, you'll get 2 or 3 30-minute check-in calls every month so that you're not out there on your own. And we will try to be of help to you and try to respond to your individual needs. If you've done, a lot of people need a lot of help. And so the Premier package is really for them. There are discounts for paying in cash. There are then monthly payment plans. If you do not want to become a member, then you can buy the courses individually, or the components of the course individually for an a la carte price, which is going to be more expensive, just because that's the way those things are priced. So that's what we're doing. We're working on our website, the Thinkific website, trying to get that straightened away, and so you're going to start seeing changes gradually. So one of the things that we really want to talk about today is, the market's really getting to be pretty bright, pretty grim. Competition for executive management jobs, which has been pretty intense for the last 2 or 3 years, is only going to intensify over the next 5 years. One of the things we've been looking at is research on what's happening in the job market. And what we found is that, again, consistently 60% of the jobs are not posted. And people say, well, why is that a fact? Why does that happen? Why does that happen? Well, many job posts are inactive or scams. Okay. So you got to be very careful. If you're on some of these, great job boards right now, there's a slowing of hiring. And so a lot of companies are just leaving their want ads up or their job summaries up, but they're not really active. There are people out there with, quote, active profiles up, but they're also scammers. Oh, you'll need to buy this equipment to work from home, and you need to transfer that to us. And then once you receive it, we'll reimburse you. Or once you sign and that has been pulled so many times now, and so many people have lost, $3, $4, $5, $10,000. So be very reluctant to give anybody your personal information, bank information, saying that, oh, you're going to get this job, we just need to expedite that. Don't. There's a process that has to happen. Don't be giving people personal information, and don't be transferring them any money until you have a firm job offer from a company that you can verify, because there are a lot of scams. And as the market tightens, every economy goes through cycles. We're going to go through a cycle here, regardless of who's elected president. But it's going to slow somewhat. And so as that happens, you'll see more of this kind of activity. Now, one of the reasons that companies do not post a lot of their good positions is because they're inundated with applications. We're going to talk about an example of that in just a minute. But, they get hundreds of applications and they ignore most of them. Another research article I read said that 97 to 99% of all online applications are rejected. And that's a new industry estimate. Traditional job strategies are inadequate in this environment. So if you think you're going to be able to find a job online, you might be struck by lightning, but the chances are you're not going to. Generally, when you are really active, your name's going to circulate. So somebody's going to hear about you, or they're going to see your LinkedIn profile. But don't waste your time. I mean, it takes an hour and a half to do an online application. And even if you're 100% in the zone for the job, the chances are so overwhelmingly against you. So it's inefficient, it's time consuming, and it's a real downer, because where you're going to get either ignored or a letter saying you weren't selected. Now, with the perils of the economic slowdown, this is going to just put a spotlight on all these little unusuality. I'm having trouble talking today. Anomalies in the job market. So this is something you want to keep your eye on. You have a responsibility to keep track of what's happening. Even if you're not looking for a job, career management is not looking for a job. Career management is about managing your brand, keeping yourself positioned, building your reputation, continuing to do a good job. And you have to pay attention to employment activities, because you could get laid off. And the people say, it'll never happen to me, are usually the first people out the door. That was what a couple of longtime Google employees said several years ago. They were 20-year plus employees and they got laid off. Okay, so remember, online applications not going to work very well for you. Traditional job search strategies are inadequate, and the perils of the economic slowdown are significant. So the overview for today: competition for executive jobs, as we say again and again and again, will not lessen and this is the important part, for the foreseeable future. I've read nothing that suggests that this white collar recession is suddenly going to turn around. Now, the other thing that's coming into play is the evolving economy, and its threats are akin to the offshoring of jobs in the 80s and 90s. 69% of the companies took jobs overseas. Manufacturing, for example, in the global economy lost 5 million jobs since 2000. So what we're going to see here now with automated technology will sweep aside the people who say, oh, it's not going to really affect me, or I'm not really worried about it. The doubters and the unprepared are at risk. And what's going to happen is now this unique sort of environment where you have a slowing economy, AI, and an increasing use of automation. AI is going to do to the workforce what the global trade and did in the 1980s and 90s. So it's something that you want to be aware of, and you want to track and pay attention. So please keep in mind that this is going to have an impact on your career, whether you want it to or not. Now, if you're at the highest level, it's going to be trickle up. So, you just still need to pay attention to what's going to happen. Hiring decisions are made based on trust, likability, and experience. So this is what we call the devil in the details. And a lot of times people go into a job interview, and it's very competitive because of all the factors I've been talking about. And they really are not prepared. They haven't thought about examples they want to present. They haven't thought about what big successes have I accomplished that would really apply to this job. What can I do to make myself likable, and what information can I share that will foster trust? And that's going to be, they're going to look at your trust, your likability, and experience. So you just can't show up. So you must prepare in advance. And that's one of the things we're going to go into in great detail with our interview boot camp when we launch that in the fall. Now, factors shaped, the factors that go into those decisions are shaped by little things, okay? And we're now going to kind of venture into some areas that some people may find sensitive, some people may find inappropriate, but let me be very honest with you. I spent 27 years watching this happen. I've watched companies discriminate. I've watched other search firms discriminate. And let me tell you something, you've got to pay attention to those little details, not only about your examples, not only about your stories that you're going to tell, the points you're going to emphasize, but you also need to be very focused on your presence, your strategy for engagement, how you're going to, your sense of responsiveness, and the stories you're going to tell. Because those stories that you overlook or forgot, those may be the meaningful difference that can turn the search in your favor. Now, your experience is, and most of you know this, your presence is really bound to your experience, but that's no longer enough. And now as the baby boomers and Generation X recruiters begin to slow down and retire, they are being replaced by millennial and Gen Zs, and their values are on the rise, and they're different than the boomers and the Gen Xs. So what we're seeing now is that people are looking at candidates from a health perspective, how they presented in the interview. Were they neat? Were their shoes shined? Did they present professionally? Their level of energy. Those are all now big factors in the decision-making process, in the trust and likability process. Do not lie to yourself. If you know you're overweight, work hard to lose the weight. Now, I've spent a lot of time talking to dietitians and physicians, and the number of people that absolutely can't lose weight because of some genetic disposition or some particular medical condition is very small. Most people don't lose weight because they've spent a lifetime of not paying attention to what they eat and how much they eat. Let me tell you something, that's going to come into play. When there are fewer jobs, you absolutely must pay attention to how you present, how you're being perceived. It's so important. And as these new younger recruiters come into play, they all have a different set of values, and everybody talks about that, but it really comes into to play when somebody now is younger than you, in better health than you, and you are overweight, or you are not feeling well, or you don't look good, or you're dressed in some school bus outfit. These things will hurt you. Now, is discrimination for age against the law? Yes. Is discrimination based on weight against the law? Yes, as long as it does not come up against the requirements of the job. You have to be able to do this kind of work and lift this much weight and do these kinds of things. But let me tell you something. Those are cases that are absolutely challenging to win in court. So if you need to take stock now, before the market really turns south, and do not lie to yourself. Think about, okay, I need to set a target, and I'm going to watch what I eat. I'm going to watch how much I eat. I'm going to get exercise. I'm going to build up my energy, and I'm going to be able to present more effectively. Do not lie to yourself. This will hurt you. And I have seen it come into play more in the last 6 to 8 months previously. And it happened to me right before I had heart surgery. A bunch of board members in a Texas Hill Country Hospital looked at me and said, "What happens when you die?" And I was very taken back. And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, you don't look very good." And I thought, holy cow. And they gave the search to two other guys from a competing firm. They were in their 40s. They looked healthy. They were robust. They were, as they used to say, full of piss and vinegar. And I was the preferred firm. I had done all my homework. I built my connections with the chairman and the vice chairman and the outgoing CEO who was retiring, but I didn't get the job. And that was the first time I was not selected because the physicians had concerns about my health. And I didn't, really think I had any big problems. I was overweight at the time because I'd been traveling and I hadn't watched my diet and wasn't getting any exercise. But, my suits weren't poorly fitting. And, I felt, other than sciatica, I felt good. But they saw something that I didn't see because for me, my condition was happening very slowly. And, in January 2022, I had open heart surgery. So, that was a big wake-up call for me in terms of not only getting that major problem solved, but also the fact that when our health goes down, when our appearance begins to change, we generally don't see it happening because it happens so slowly. I once told a group of people when I was in a TV studio once, the teleprompter went down and we had to stop production, and I was sitting there at the desk waiting for them to get ready to go back live. And I looked over at a monitor, and there was a freeze frame of a guy with a gray suit and power tie, and he had gray hair. And I thought, who is that? It was me. I had been looking at myself every morning in the mirror and didn't really realize how gray my hair had become. But when I saw it in sort of an abstract fashion, boy, that came crashing down. And I was used to be a big smoker, and all I could think of was, thank God it didn't turn yellow with nicotine. Okay, so one of the things you're going to have to do, and people are probably maybe clicking off as we go, but discipline to choose is really, really important. You're going to have to discipline it with your career branding opportunities. When you go to an airport, go to the pharmacy, or even church, and look at the extent of the problem. We are becoming a nation that's really becoming obese, and it is at epidemic levels, and it's even extending down into our kids. What this should tell you is that if you are somebody who's got a lot of ability, a lot of desire, but you're not taking good care of yourself, this is a big, huge opportunity for you to improve your brand. This is a big, huge opportunity for you to differentiate yourself. Now, your energy, your confidence, and your disposition are all linked to your overall health and fitness. So I really want you to begin thinking about that. I'm sorry I'm going to be the person that kind of pokes you about it, but if all things are equal, okay, the person who looks the best, who has the presentation, who got along with the interview team, that's going to be the person that gets the job. A person who's overweight A person that is probably, in their and maybe late 60s, they are going to get discriminated against, and it's the natural thing. You're probably never ever going to be able to prove it in a court of law. So the only thing you can do is absolutely pay attention and take responsibility and accountability for your health, for how you present, for how you prepare for interviews, for how you dress. All of those things, they're all on you. Okay. Now let's get into finding those gold nuggets. Let me tell you something. Mining for gold the old-fashioned way is challenging and hard work. There was a lot of back-breaking digging and sifting and all of those things. We all remember the movies and the pictures of the prospectors with their pans at a river bank trying to kind of sift through to see if there's any gold. This process, when you're trying to really to get in touch with some of the things you've probably forgotten about, it requires a real deep dive into into self-reflection, and that's not something most people do easily. We want to tell ourselves, "Oh, everything's good. That's good. I'm good at interviewing. I'm good at this. I'm good at that." You got to stop and really question yourself, because you don't want to go through all the effort to get to the interview table and then botch it up. You can't afford to do that. And you can't afford to get to the interview table and leave great stories, great examples on the table, because you've never really gone back and really thought deeply about what have I done that will help support my commitment or my assertion that these are my 4 or 5 signature strengths. And, sometimes those little examples can be really game changing. So the self-reflection, let me tell you something. It takes time. It's not okay, sit down, make a list. Okay, it's time to do something else. No, rely on your journals. That's why I'm such a big, big fan of journaling. Okay. Always pay attention and journal. Keep track of your accomplishments. Keep track of people that you're meeting, your observations. These things may come back to help you one day. But clearly, when I saw people in job interviews as a recruiter, one of the questions I almost always asked was, "Tell me about your rate of turnover." Why? Because that is a huge cost that's never reported. It's never shown anywhere in any of the financials, but it has an impact on the organization. And a turnover problem also suggests there's a culture issue, or there's a sense of toxicity in the organization, or there's a wage and salary issue. One of those major components. I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with CEOs who said, "I can't remember. I don't know." And it was like, this was, 2 years ago or 3 years ago or 5 years ago. You can't remember what your turnover was, because that's a major, major operational issue. If you're a CEO, that's a big part of your role. The people that you hire, the people that are there to execute, you're there to back them up and solve problems they can't solve. And so you need to know what your turnover rate is. So if you've made strides in that, then keep tabs and document it with numbers. I reduced it by 20%. Well, 20% of what? You always want to have a baseline number. So keep good records of your accomplishments, weekly or monthly, but don't let anything fall between the cracks. So journaling is really important. And reflection, being very thoughtful, taking time to go and just be by yourself for a little while, and go do something you enjoy doing, stand by the lake, sit on your patio, do something where you can let your mind clear out and begin to kind of think about, okay, what do I need to work on? What have I done that I can do better? What accomplishments have I put forward that will really help me in the future and tell my story? And it can be more difficult. And if you wait a lifetime to try to adapt to this kind of interviewing, it's going to be really tough. And if you're really struggling, I really encourage you that when we post the boot camp on interviewing, that you consider signing up for that course. Let me tell you how it's going to work just briefly. It's not going to be a group coaching session. If you sign up for the course, you will get time every week to spend an hour with me. There'll be 3 or 4 mock interviews. There's going to be rehearsals. There's going to be some homework, not a lot of homework, but there will be homework. And I'm going to hold you to a high standard to improve your performance. So if you really don't care, or if you don't think that's a big issue, then don't sign up, or you will be a colossal waste of your money. So kind of if you're struggling to close the deal, when that posts, you might pay attention to it. Now, some of the materials are in our courses, but this is going to be a much deeper dive, because when you record something on video, the people aren't going to want to pay more than about 20 minutes attention to an online course, right or wrong. That's the way it goes. So when you talk about deep diving, and this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. The deep dive is for the rest of your career. And you want to think about events and stories and accomplishments and all those things that you can think about. Talk to your friends, review your journals. If you don't want to keep a journal, then create a success file so you can put the documentation of your big successes. I encourage people to also retain their old calendars. Some people call them diaries, because that can help you remember people from your past. And so some people don't want to do that, but if you kept them, that can be also a big help to you in putting together and kind of curating your information. I hope you've kept in touch with former colleagues, including supervisors, your superiors, and even sometimes sit down with your spouse and say, what have I done that's at work that I've talked about that impressed you? And sometimes she or he may remember something that completely skipped your mind. So what I'm telling you is go through these things. People say, oh, this is just dot points for presentation. No, it's about digging into the details. And these are the things you have to do, because we tend to put stuff in a file cabinet and forget it's there. So these are all people you want to talk to, because they may punch a button that helps you remember something very, 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 very helpful. Okay, you also want to look at your value brand statement worksheet as you put down things that you accomplished, and you put down the verification or the validation on the right side, the strengths on the left side, and the validation on the right side. Sometimes when you write things down, they are really gems, but then you forget about them. So don't forget about them. Go back and look at your value brand statement to be sure that you are tapping in to every ounce of goodness you can to impress people at the interview table. Now, this is the blinding flash of the obvious. The future will not look the same, okay? And in the past, you used to hear people, well, we're going to get everything ready and hope for the best. That's not a strategy that's going to be very effective going forward. Career management is not job searching. Career management is the term that encompasses everything about your career, your brand, your plan, your performance, you're in a job search, all of those things, your connections. That's all part of the process. And as we move toward more automation, it's going to be your relationships that you have, but it's also going to be your digital brand, your digital footprint. That's very, very important. So going forward, be sure that you create a disciplined plan. Be sure that you adapt a more disciplined approach to managing your career. And if you're in a job search, you absolutely have to be much more disciplined. Tomorrow morning in our Guiding Your Career report will be a rundown of 5 things you can do if you don't have a network, or you're really struggling, your network's not aligned with where you are or where you want to go. There will be 5 steps outlined for you to help you accelerate your job search. That's in our Guiding Your Career report, our Wednesday morning newsletter. So here's my recommendations. Okay, start keeping a journal. I talk about this all the time. People wish I'd shut up about it, but it's so important. You will accumulate a wealth of information that will be very, very helpful to you. And decide, what do you want to, I'm a big person about gratitude. I'm a big person about connections and how that connection might work, and, an accomplishment with the details. I reduced it from this to this, a percentage, but here are the actual baseline numbers. If you have written it down, you can remember that stuff. If you don't, without having quantitative information, it's going to put you at a disadvantage in an interview. Okay, so when you journal, also kind of adopt the KPI routine. What were my key performance indicators, and how did I do against those key performance indicators? Retain your diaries. Now, invest time maintaining contact with former superiors, peers, etc. It's amazing how we don't do that. And there are people that I really enjoyed in the news business, but there's only a small handful that I've been able to stay in touch with. One of them was an interview on our Self Perspective, Mike Capps, who was a former cameraman, reporter for NBC, KPRC in Houston at night on the crime beat. He became a world-class AAA play-by-play announcer, really respected and knows a lot of people. Really interesting guy. And fortunately, we were able to stay connected over time. So that's really important to maintain contacts. Maintain contacts with people that you worked with. Now, at my age, unfortunately, some of my bosses are passing on, but I've also tried to maintain contact with people at my peer level and some and subordinates that I worked with over time. So this is an investment. Okay, it's really an important investment because it could help you if there's ever any question about performance in the past. They can also help you as references. So it's just they can be invaluable. And on top of that, it's just a great thing for you to stay in touch. Now, integrate information with the STAR process. We're going to be talking about that more. When it first came out, I was not a big fan of STAR because it was just a way to answer questions. But when I started putting it together with my core and categorical process, it makes a lot of sense. STAR stands for situation, tactics, actions, and results. And that's a great way to organize your thinking for how you answer every question or how you can answer most questions. Core and categorical is the process of putting your skills, your strengths, and your stories together so that you can easily index them and use them in an interview. And we'll be spending a lot of time on that in the interview boot camp. You're going to have a lot of examples. If you really do a good job documenting your career, maintaining information, you're going to end up with a lot of examples. Some will be things that you do going forward. And what you'll constantly be doing is like a museum curator. You're going to be keeping the most relevant things with technology and some things that reflect the times of the day, how things are working today. And some of the older things, while important, you can then push back and bring them forward only when they need to be brought forward for a specific instance. But this is the kind of investment in time you need to make in your storytelling. It will absolutely make a big difference in your career. So I think one of the things I said earlier is that machine automation's impact on jobs, it's going to be a downer. And again, what we witnessed in the 80s and 90s in terms of loss of good U.S. jobs, this is going to happen again. And so you need to be prepared for it. I want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope this has been helpful. Once I got my mouth working properly. So tomorrow afternoon, we have another group coaching session, office hours, and we're going to be talking about some really important stuff. And it's been posted already. If you're in our membership group, you've already got a notice, and we'll be posting some more of that information later today. But it'll be a chock-a-block with good career information. So I really want to thank you today for being with us, and I hope that you'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Thursday night on TikTok, we have our Your Career Community question session. Last week, we had over 400 people show up. Then Friday morning, we have Career Live, which gives you an opportunity as a member or as a client or as someone who's more connected in this region, in this country, to ask questions. Happy to do that. It's interesting on TikTok, you'll get questions on careers from all over the place. So we have two basic emphasis on the question time. So I want to thank you all for being with us today, and we'll see you soon.